Thanks. I did know ahead of time. But I did not have a whole lot of time to prepare because the week was a little bit of a busier week than expected. And I spent 5.5 hours trying to upgrade my phone yesterday. It did get upgraded, but I spent probably 4 of that at the Verizon store. Thank goodness for my stepdaughter to watch the boys, because James is back to work yesterday. So, God, I pray that this morning that your message would come forth this morning, that your words would come out, that your Holy Spirit would flow in the message, and God, that this would be your message and not mine. And we thank you for this house. We thank you for the privilege that we have to come together and worship together in a country where this is not, where we are free to do so, and we are not persecuted. Thank you, Lord. So, more coffee. This message, I don't know how many messages I'm going to end up having on worship, but this is part 2, another piece, and it may not go super long, but we will see how God pulls it all together. And so today, if we need a title, you can call it, Why Do We Worship Together? And I do think that there will probably be more after this, because I already have another topic to think about. But before we head too much into all of that, and I was pondering, the Fear Is Not My Future song, and something that happened yesterday, well, that was also with Ezzy, that was a continuation from the winter. And so yesterday, I'll give you the story. Yesterday, so the boys have sized up on their bikes. So Jude is in an adult-sized bike with much bigger tires, and because he's an aggressive, he's competitive, he likes to do things, he likes the adrenaline. So we sized him up to an adult-sized bike, which means also Ezzy, at Mr. Longlegs, if anybody has noticed, was also needing to size up. So he got Jude's hand-me-down. That's the way it goes with little brothers. Or siblings at all, right? And so he got Jude's bike, which is a 24-inch tire. It's perfect for him. But Ezzy has a hard time with change. And he doesn't like to give up the bike that he loved, or, from the winter, the snow pants that he loved, even though they were getting a little too tight, And so, parenting Ezzy has been this lesson in how to help him navigate through change that he doesn't always like. And so we went as a family out to the bike path yesterday just to not go, we went in the woods a little bit, but on the easy trails, and get used to the new bikes. So Ezzy gets scared. And so one of the things he has the hardest time with in the woods is the roots. It's really bumpy. And when you have small tires, and you're sitting on your seat, then you feel every bump, and it's like it's going to throw you right off the bike, and it doesn't feel stable. So now he's on a bigger bike. The tires are that much bigger. They're going to navigate the roots that much better. But we were also trying to get him to learn how to stand up on his pedals, right? And then your knees are the shocks, and you go over the bumps, and you navigate that much better. Well, he was afraid to stand on his pedals. This is fear. I mean, natural fear, right? And he's 8, and it's normal, and it's his personality and all of that. So we're just pulling out our hair. How do we get him? You got to stand up on your pedals. We got to I know he can do it, but he's got to do it on the new bike. And we're in the woods, and there's mosquitoes and all this stuff. And so I went back to a conversation that I had with him when we were skiing this winter, where I was trying to get him to go down a hill that was steeper than he was used to, and he was afraid. And he was crying, and it was drama, and it was cold and windy. I mean, all the things. And so I grabbed him, and I pulled him in, and I talked to him. And I said, Ezzy, do you trust that mommy's not going to take you down a hill that you are going, like we might wreck, but I know that you can do this. You have the skill to do this. And we worked through it, and he calmed down, gave him a hug, and then I said, we're going to do this. We're going to do one turn at a time, and we took it, and it took him about 5 turns, and he was like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, I know, right? Right? But he had to have that confidence that he could do it. So yesterday when we were in the bike path, I took it back. I said, Ezzy, do you think that mommy and daddy are going to take you somewhere where we know that you can't do it? Do you trust us that we can help you? You have to listen to us and trust that we're not going to take you somewhere. I mean, things can always happen, but that's not what we're talking about, right? We know that you have the skill to do this. And so we're asking you to do it and step out. And he, okay, and he works into it. And then I said, Ezzy, I want to ask you something. You're afraid, right? Yeah, what if I fall off my bike and I crash hard and I get really hurt? Okay, that's always a risk when we're doing things like biking and skiing. But I said that can always happen, but are you letting your fear stop you? And he stopped for a minute and he goes, yes. I said, do you trust us that we are going to teach you? I said, do you trust that? The point that I'm getting to is the trust that he has in mom and dad, right? And so I'm thinking about this song, Fear. And do we let our fear get in the way? If we're letting fear get in the way, this is not a message of condemnation. This is what our fear, when we trust God, then we can do things afraid. Ezzy was still a little nervous when he dove off into the into the woods and started getting, up on his pedal. My conversation with him didn't make him not afraid, but it made him trust me enough that I believed in him and that he could try it. And so that's, I'm hoping that I can portray this, that it's not about our fear, but who we think God is and his love for us. And that's why I ended up with the How He Loves and just the chorus, because when we really grasp his love for us and he asks us to step out into something. Now, I'm not talking about doing things that he hasn't asked us to do. That's not a smart idea. But can we step out into something afraid and try it? And he carries us through it, and he asks us to do things and he gives us what we need to do it. Or he might ask us to let him into a part of our life that is hurt, that has been hurt, the wounds in our life, and heal that. And that's probably scarier than trying to do something new, to be honest. Letting him into a place that is wounded, because it's so hurt already, and human nature shuts it off. But can we trust God to open the door and to let him in? That's your bonus sermon, as everybody always says, So I thought about saying that in the middle of the song, but it was just too much. Like, I can bring it in here. So why do we worship together? And I want to throw out a little thing. I had a conversation after my last sermon, just super quick, with someone here, and you'll know who you are. And the difference, just quickly about the difference between praise and worship. And this is a brief thing. So that praise is singing about God. And that's good. That brings us in, that reminds us, that takes our focus to God. Praise is good. But what is worship? That it might be slightly different, and worship is singing to God. So worship that sings to God requires us to open our heart a little more. We can talk about somebody, but when we talk to somebody, it's it's different. There's a different level. And worship takes you deeper And it also requires a vulnerability and an openness to him. And our conversation was just about how some people and some congregations are a little scared to do that. So I guess that goes into where that little mini sermon actually does connect. And so we are not that church, but just to throw these things out and think about them and ponder them, in life in Christ, and the whole time that I've been here, worship, as in musical worship, as part of the Sunday morning church, is a huge part of this. And sometimes, often, actually, our worship goes longer than our sermon, and I love that, and I appreciate that. And that has also given me a little more of a responsibility as I've grown as a leader over the years, into bringing and creating, bringing in a team, and what songs do we do? How do we, worship together in the congregation is different than other kinds of worship. And that's where I'm going. And so, there's a difference between the corporate worship, the songs and singing that we do on a Sunday morning is different even than Wednesday nights. That has a different goal, a different purpose. And yes, there are people that are together. There is a corporate aspect to that, but the purpose and the goal is different. And obviously, it's different than when we worship on our own. So before I go any further there, over the last several months, as we have begun to try to take on the responsibility of a pastoral team, it's really sent me, and then also James and I, in some of our conversation at home, in thinking about the purpose of a local church. And obviously, if you're not here today, but you still, come to life in Christ, there's some sort of reasoning why you come to this church and not a different church, and that's great. But what makes any local church special? And I kind of am talking about the smaller ones, not the big ones. I think the big churches are attempting, in some of them, are attempting to bring in smaller groups so that there can be relationship. That's where I'm going, is the relationship. When I look around, and some of these stories are not going to be new. I know some of you better than others, right, over the years, and that's okay, because other people know others closer. There's different relationships. It's where real relationship happens. And then also, my church is my support system. So the story that I remember so much was when James was gone for the academy for customs. He was gone from November until April. And when he left, Ezzy was 6 months old, and Jude was 2. And Megan was living with us and going to school, finishing her degree at Johnson. And it was winter, and it was cold, and it was very snowy. And, now I can go outside, and if he's working and we get a dump while he's gone, I can go outside and snow blow the driveway, and it's okay. But when the kids were 6 months old and 2, I couldn't. You don't leave them for a second by themselves, And so who came and shoveled us out? I'm going to say Pastor Al, because that's what he was at the time. He came so many times and shoveled, and our driveway isn't huge, but he shoveled it, the whole thing, even on their anniversary. And then he went home, took a shower, and took Pastor Janet out to dinner. and that's special. I've called Gil because James was working, and I tried to eat a styrofoam sled with the snowblower, and he came and helped me pull it out so I could finish. Yep, that happened. It was under the snowbank. It had fallen down and then gotten snowed on, and yeah. Snowblower's great. It shuts down immediately, right? I think about, I'm gonna call out Amy too, because we've been friends for a long time, through a lot. And there's some people that you can just be whatever, and, we can be whatever and not have to, not that we put on, it's about the trust. It's about the relationship, and not, it's important to have those close people where you can let them into everything. And this is why what the church has been for us, and hopefully we are also a support system for others. So relationships are the foundation, but other things happen in a local church. And I'm thinking of discipleship. And because of that relationship and that trust that we have with each other, we can have tough conversations and ask hard questions. And I think we can probably all think about when we've been challenged by someone in whether it's our belief, or are you really trusting in God? Are you afraid? Are you, what's behind this? We have a reaction that's emotional, and you talk to somebody and say, what's going on? And you help lead them through. Those are all things that happen in a local church. And so bringing it back to the worship specifically, I have learned a lot over the years. And I remember at first trying to bring in a new song that, like when I was early first here. And I worshiped in a team before I moved here. And so I tried to bring in a song that was a great song, worked there, people responded. The team, it wasn't hard. To me, it didn't seem hard, but here, right? Belly flop. And I didn't know why. And I was young. And then other times, over the years, introduced a song that really I connected with in the car or in my personal life at home. And, this is a great song. We got to sing this at church. And again, right? So what is up with that? This is where I'm also sharing some of what it's like to be a worship leader, thoughts here, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, that when you get here at, even 9 o'clock, if you're here to listen to us practice, you get some of it, but you don't get the full and all the years of all the stuff that we've come through. And so just to take a minute and say, I am so grateful and proud of everybody on our team, because we challenge each other and then we rise to the occasion. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And what happens when we do that, when we do something afraid, I'm not sure I can do it. And then you try it and you go into it. And then being on a team is a different aspect also. There's something to that. But God brings you up. God meets you. Sometimes, okay, well, that's too much for today. We need more practice time. Often, though, it's bringing it in. We learn a new song. What comes out, we feel it out. It might be rough, but we do it. And God meets us. So I'm grateful for our team. We have come a long ways. So where was I? So I've learned over time that our corporate worship, our congregational worship, is just different. There is something unique and special about coming together, and I'm specifically talking about music worship here. We can call, the whole thing is our worship service, our tithes are worship, our listening and our sermon is worship, the children's church is worship, fellowshipping afterward, that's all worship. But I'm specifically meaning and talking about the music worship. And what is the difference? And I've had a hard time putting words to it. I can tell you what it's not. But sometimes it's hard, other than just as we come together and as we start to think about it, it's different. There's just, so we know God says that where two or more are gathered, that he is there, right? But I think that's the foundation, but there's so much more than that. That when we come together and we're all singing one song together, I don't know, it's just special. And there's power in it. It's really, It's just cool. I don't know how to say it. And I don't have a whole ton of scriptures today, so take that for what it is. This is me sharing my heart. I know that I can start with what it's not. And we went down this a little bit earlier. It's not soaking, right? There are times on a Sunday morning when we might have some songs that are that way, or maybe a set, right? Every Sunday is different. So different. And so, but it's not a soaking service. We don't come here to, we come to receive, but we also come to participate. There's a difference. It's a different goal. It's not personal worship in the same way that worship in our home, in our car, in our shower, right? All of those other times, all of those things are different. And all important and necessary. But corporate worship is something special. And so one of the other pieces that I've learned over the years is we sing different songs, at least for me. I listen to different songs at home than we sing on Sunday mornings. And probably, I see lots of nods, probably that's similar for other people. And part of it is because, we're only as good as we're good. Like, there are songs that are really hard to try to do when we have even 5 of us up there. It's really hard. And, we're used to listening to, let's say, Elevation Music, where they have probably 20 musicians. And then if it's a studio album, there might be 100 tracks at different times during that song. There is no way we are ever going to sound like that. Also, they're professionals. That's their job. Those musicians are professionals. We're not. Not even close. And as much I think all of us would like to spend more time doing our music and practicing and playing together, we all have jobs and families. We're amateurs. We do the best we can, but we are not Elevation. We're not Bethel. We're not any of those other ones, And so the sound that comes forth is different. But that's the beauty of it, because that's the purpose of it. So I wasn't going to go here. One conversation that James and I had with some friends of ours who are actually Catholic. I may need some help, James, to remember how to put it. But it's basically about our imperfection, and that in our imperfection, we are perfect. Because there's no expectation. We have that. Is there anything else? That's really it, right? What? Okay. And this is one of those things that both of us are like, oh, we're going to be discussing this and talking about this, and probably will be a sermon coming out of it at some point. But about this thought that we're always seeking to increase our skill and become better musicians, but it's never about being perfect. It's never, because I'm pretty sure that what you guys all love is that me, and Pastor Aaron, and Pastor James, and we know Laura, and we know Craig. We know people, and we love them, and that's the beauty. When we serve you, there's a relationship there too. It's not just in the worship team. So, I don't have any expectation as a leader that we ever sound like anybody else. I actually don't want to. Like, when we learn a new song, I want to learn it's important. It's important part of the process of being a musician to learn a song and imitate the original to learn it. We sit there, we play with it, we try to match the strumming pattern, we match the timing, which Craig listens to a rhythm. We do all those things with the intention that once we have a foundation, then we make it ours. And that's, I don't know, I've had people tell me, it's been a while, but even How He Loves, they're like, nobody does that song. I just like the way you do that song. It's not the same when I listen to it, and there's a million covers of that song, and by anybody else, it's just not the same, because you know me, and there's a difference there. So all of this is building into why it's so special that we come together and sing and worship together. Also, I read a little bit in my little bit of research that I was able to do, that there's also something about singing, like physically, actually singing, and that when we do that, what does it do? We have to think. It brings our minds together. It brings our bodies together. Doesn't matter how awful you sound, right? Some people don't have a microphone, and that's fine. But sometimes people that draw us into worship are awful singers, but they're so into it that they bring us, they help. We're all here. Even if we were all fantastic musicians, we could not all be up front. We need all of us to make a Sunday morning happen and work. So singing, there's something special there. And I'm not going to try to say, don't take it to mean that you have to sing the whole thing if you don't want to. But there's something special about singing too, and how it pulls all of our minds, our body, our mind, soul, and spirit together in a way that is different than just sitting and listening. So I do have a few interesting little tidbits about public worship compared to corporate worship compared to private worship. And I'm going to throw these out there, not necessarily saying I'm just taking this from somebody else. So let's see what we think as we go through this. The Lord is more glorified by public worship than private. See, I hesitate with this. Is he more glorified? I don't know. It's just different, right? That when we come together and all of our focus is on God, he meets us in a different way than when we're at home. It's different. It's not more. Yeah. I would say, too, the Lord's presence is different on a Sunday morning worship, right? The presence is different. Again, it's so hard to put your finger on it. He manifests himself differently in corporate worship than in private worship. That can be sometimes, not always. Depends on the person or the timing. Yeah. So here's one, too. This is an important piece of being part of a local church. That so the way, I want to use a different word than this. Corporate worship is security against apostasy. So what I want to say there is, and this is why we come to church, but this also applies to worship. When we get off on our own, it's a dangerous thing. We come to church because it's easy. The single sheep that's by itself is the one that the predators take out. There you go. And so I think that's more about being part of a church and really being part of a church and engaging and getting to know people. That's part of what we do. And I say, as a pastoral team, part of what we're thinking about is guarding against those wolves that want to come in and take out sheep. And we're doing our best, to try to watch that. Corporate worship is a resemblance of heaven. That's one of the places that I thought about going, and I will save it for another one, is this term throne room worship. And I want to look in a little bit more, do more research into what that is. But what that that phrase is intending to be is, we know worship goes on in heaven. It's in Ezekiel, it's in Revelation, it's there. We know that there are cherubim and they're singing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord, And so when we want to worship like that, we want to see God in that same way. Yeah, that's where I'm going to go. Then I want to throw another thought here that is on my mind, and again, sharing with you what's, as worship leader, what I've learned, and then what, over time, just thinking about for the church. And this is theology in worship. And I think at first, when that thought first came to me, it was like, wait, we think about, and we've talked about theology, and James talks about theology, but what I want to go there is so let me give you the history too. So, at first thinking about that, like we think about theology as in teaching and preaching and studying the word and Bible studies and reading books and all of those sorts of things. But let's go to what songs are and what song and worship, musical worship has been over the years. So I started by questioning some of the words in the songs we were singing. And this was years ago. It's been a long process. So one of the criticisms of modern worship is that it's very people-centered. It's me-centered. And it's about who I am rather than about who God is. So I've worked through this, thought, discussed, pulled out songs, do we sing them, do we not sing them, all of those things. And I've really come to value the songs that take our focus to God rather than ourselves. But I'm going to be careful not to just toss things and say, oh, that song is really me-centered, because sometimes we need that. So this song is one I've used, I used to describe this. So the song that I think about is actually No Longer Slaves. So I'm going to read it. This is a Bible-based song, right? This is the Bible. So listen to it. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins. It doesn't get much more biblical than I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God, right? That is almost word for word. But how many times in that song do we sing I, me, and my? It's the whole song. So this is why I'm using this one. What do we do with that? Obviously, we're not going to throw this song out. It's a fantastic song. How many of us have experienced healing, deliverance, building of our faith, strengthening of our foundation through that particular song? Those are all good things. We're not going to toss them, right? My point is just, I am cautious to try to keep it all in a balance. Most importantly, listen to the leading of the Holy Spirit for the timing, because that's what we wait for. And so, as we're pulling in some new songs that we're going to learn, as we're thinking about old songs that we're going to do over and over again, that's on my mind. That what I really want is for all of us to know God better. The more we know God, the more we experience him, the more we believe in him, the more we trust in him, the freer we are to be who he created us to be. That's where we're going. So the history about some of this is before there was print, before the printing press, before all of that, think about how history and legends were passed along. Song was a huge part of that. All of some of these really old nursery rhymes that make no sense now, that was way back when that was part of culture, was song. And even in the Bible, in Acts, and some of or coming out of that, the first few hundred years after Christ, the creeds came out of that. Why? Because you put things into a song or a poem and people remember it. Why do we teach the ABCs to kids in a song? Well, that's why. Because we learn things. Because music is stored in a different place in our brain than information, so verbal or whatever information. And so it's important that whether we're in church on a Sunday or whether we are listening to worship on our own, that what we're filling our minds with and we're remembering is actually who God is. It's truth, and it's not, again, there is such a place for declaring, just like I said today, but when it's like we can declare, but what it is it all has to be based on our beliefs about God and our trust in God and his love for us. That is the absolute key. So, where was I? Gotta keep track of my notes here. I forgot to put page numbers on it. So the historical church learned about God through song and music. And if you look at the hymns are complicated and often difficult to play. I'm just going to tell you that. There's a lot of chords. It's harder than modern worship. And the words are sometimes big. There's a lot of words in a little bit of time. But they're used to teach theology to congregations that didn't have a lot of education. In our modern world, we have computers that are so far beyond the original computers in this little tiny thing. It's just incredible the amount of information that we have at our fingertips. But if you think about history and what was available, even the 1800s, say they didn't know what was going on. They learned theology, they learned about God through hymns, along with all of the a sermon or whatever books they did have. So I think our modern worship misses sometimes some of the richness that the historical music used to have. There are other strengths, and that's why we try. I haven't in a while. We need to do more hymns. Try to bring hymns in or some of those older songs because they're wonderful and we love them. And so I read this question in one of the books that I have for worship leaders. It says, if all that our congregations had were our worship services and not the Bible or sermons or the computers in our pockets, what would people learn and know about God? And I find that fascinating. And I'm enjoying, I don't have a ton of time, but I'm doing it a little at a time, reading some things about the history of modern worship, of contemporary worship. You read through the history and you learn, wow, there's these different movements that happened and different theology that came out of it and different songs that came out of it, different focuses on different things. And I find it actually very interesting. And so, that's the end of what I have for today, but I want to throw that out there that, obviously you guys are here on Sunday and everybody participates in worship. This is not trying to come across as this is something that we're missing. I don't think we are. But if we can add to our thoughts about worship and the richness that it brings when we come together on a Sunday morning and that, with the 4 or 5 songs that we end up choosing, hopefully the intent and the desire is that those are God songs for all of us for the day. There is thought and prayer and effort that is put into them. It's not a random choice of songs. It's very much not, and that as we come together, know that when you sing and you come together as we all sit in our chairs and we're all doing our things and we're meeting with God and we're learning more about who he is and experiencing his presence, that we're also giving that experience to others. We bring things and that somebody else, Phyllis, you and I are not the same. What Phyllis brings is not the same as me. We need each other in worship along with, just as because we're the body and that's what we do. Yeah. It's important and it's special and it's good. So I think we have plenty of time for some ministry if we need to do that. And don't forget that we have coffee and snacks upstairs. And it's not quite as long. It's only 11:30. And so Laura, if Laura's ready to come up and play with us.